"Begin at the beginning," the king said very gravely, "and go on till you come to the end, then stop." That line, you probably remember, is from Alice in Wonderland. Time, space, our own lives, this is the stuff that makes up our reality. But is all that we perceive the world around us to be, in fact, the real world? Or is it possible that we are too preoccupied to notice what is really real? Then again, what's real? How do we grab a hold of the real and stay attached to it and make everything real? Does this sound very philosophical to you? Actually, this is one of the major lessons of Parashat Emor, which we're reading, studying this week in the land of Israel. Parashat Emor is actually all about perceptions of reality. See, really everything, all existence has one source, one root, where it all meets, and that's Hashem Himself. And there, everything is one. The dimensions of space, time, and life all intersect and come together and mix together, and everything is one at that source, the source of godliness. This week's Torah portion of Parashat Emor is instructive in showing us something about how everything is connected at that source. Despite how things appear to us, and despite the fact that there is so much to distract us from focusing on the one true reality, that there's only Hashem and nothing else. Nothing else. As the Torah portion begins, we move from the general rules of holiness for all of Israel that we were taught in Parashat Kedoshim, back to the rules for the Kohanim, the lineal descendants of Aaron, the priesthood, and the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. The first rule of the Kohanim is, each of you shall not contaminate himself to a dead person. This, of course, is connected to the Torah's ordinance of the red heifer. We've discussed this at great length over many years, that the exposure to death brings about a state of, it's called tumah, which is translated as impurity. We talked about this extensively in the beginning of the book of Vayikra. It's really a spiritual imbalance. It's a spiritual confusion that the exposure of death brings about. And in this state, it affects everyone. But the Kohanim, the priestly descendants of Aaron, who, through their attending to the divine service in the Holy Temple, are responsible for the very dwelling of the Shekhinah, the divine presence in this world, and for the blessing in this world, these Kohanim, they are enjoined to remove themselves, to distance themselves from what the Torah essentially reveals to us to be the illusion of death. They are instructed to ignore this debilitating illusion. We all suffer from this manifestation of the human condition. We think death is the end. We go into a tailspin. We get frantic. The mourner is left feeling abandoned and bereft, but the soul is forever. We do believe that. The Torah does teach that, and it will be forever. And it's only passed from one level of existence to another, like another birth. Imagine the beauty of each soul shining forever. Imagine a world that didn't suffer from death. Prophet Isaiah tells us that this is what the future holds. In the meantime, though, these instructions to the Kohanim, through these instructions, the Torah is teaching us that the contamination of death on the deepest level, the contamination is its very image in our minds. It's a falsehood, an illusion which, albeit an integral part of our situation, until, as Isaiah states, chapter 25 and verse 8, death will be swallowed up forever and God will wipe the tears off all the faces. At least until then, the Kohanim are instructed to have nothing to do with this. They must ignore it because they cannot afford to lose their balance. For them, the falsehood of death, the illusion of death, is nothing but a distraction. A symptom of the human condition is that most of us are forced to navigate under these circumstances, but it's a distraction because our lives are actually eternally connected to the source of all life, Hashem Himself. Now, moving further along in Parashat Emor, the disqualifying blemishes of the Kohanim, blemishes, physical blemishes that disqualify them from the service of the Holy Temple, are also a distraction. A distraction that would make the onlooker focus on something other than Hashem Himself. The Torah states here in chapter 21 and verse 6, "Speak to Aaron, saying, any man of your offspring throughout their generations, in whom there will be a blemish, shall not come near to offer the bread of his God." People read these verses, right? People read these verses and they malign God and they say, how discriminatory. What kind of God is this to reject someone because of some deformity that's no fault of their own? But actually, this has nothing to do with rejection. This person is disqualified, not rejected, from serving in the temple. It has nothing to do with him actually at all, but everything to do with keeping a focus not on that which stands out to us as a glitch in the matrix, something out of the ordinary. It's not about the blemished priest. It's not about what you think or the hand you think you've been dealt. It's about Hashem and the immutable truth of his existence and nothing else. And you know very well that you'd find such a person attending to the service as a distraction. And don't worry, the blemished priest has his own relationship with Hashem. But the Torah is saying, don't lose your focus at all times on the one idea that matters. So you see, the Torah itself is not as it appears. Do you remember Alice in Wonderland? Curiouser and curiouser, Alice cried. I actually was amazed to learn that there is a disorienting neurological condition that affects human perception called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, also known as Todd syndrome, or Lilliputian hallucination. People experience micropsia, macropsia, size distortion, and other sensory modalities. Micropsia is an abnormal visual condition usually occurring in the context of visual hallucination, in which affected persons see objects as being smaller than those objects actually are, whereas macropsia is a condition where the individual sees everything larger than it actually is. And this is a very big problem that people have, seeing things larger or smaller than they really are. Alice in Wonderland syndrome is named, of course, after Lewis Carroll's famous 19th century novel Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. In the story, the title character, Alice, experiences numerous situations similar to those of micropsia and macropsia. But the eyes themselves in this condition are normal, but the person will often see objects as the incorrect size, shape, or perspective angle. Therefore, people, cars, buildings, houses, animals, trees, etc. look smaller or larger than they should be, or the distances look incorrect. For example, a corridor may appear to be very long, or the ground may appear to be too close. So Alice in Wonderland syndrome is a disturbance of perception, not a specific physiological change to the body's system. And the people apparently affected by Alice in Wonderland syndrome may also lose the sense of time, a problem similar to the lack of spatial perspective. Lack of time, space, perspective, all of this leads to a distorted sense of velocity. For example, one could be inching along ever so slowly, and in reality, but it would seem that they were sprinting uncontrollably along a moving walkway, leading to severe, overwhelming disorientation. Last thing, in addition, some people may, in conjunction with high fever, experience more intense and overt hallucinations, seeing things that are not there, and misinterpreting events and situations. That's about people who officially have Alice in Wonderland syndrome. What about the rest of us? What about our perception? Is it accurate? You know, the Torah's goal is for us to see things as they are, not as we see them, because we are all suffering to some extent from similar syndrome, seeing things as they really are, not misinterpreting events and situations. So the entire chapter 23 of Parashat Emor deals with the sanctity of time. Now, time is an aspect of our lives which, if not properly understood, if not properly related to, can make us feel like captives, like victims. Immediately prior to this important chapter, we encounter a verse which I think is key to understanding everything that Parashat Emor is trying to teach us. The verse was in chapter 22, in verse 31. It says, "You shall observe my commandments and perform them. I am Hashem. You shall not desecrate my holy name. Rather, I should be sanctified among the children of Israel. I am Hashem, who sanctifies you, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be a God unto you. I am Hashem." Buying into the banality and the futility of all things, the enslavement of the mind and the subjugation of the spirit, that is the desecration of Hashem's name, which is exactly what the Egyptian exile was all about. That I am Hashem who sanctifies you, he says, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be for you a God. Anything else is a desecration of Hashem's name, thinking that everything is the same. that nothing matters, that death is the end, all of those characteristics of what Egypt really means, that everything is the same, and not to appreciate relationships, not to appreciate the concept of purity. Everything can be taken for granted, that every day is the same, that every place is the same, that this world is meaningless, that life can't be imbued with holiness, with the sacred, with a higher purpose. This is what God is calling us to rise up against. The entire chapter 23 is about the sanctity of time, beginning with Shabbat. Shabbat is the soul of time. And the chapter moves on and delineates all throughout the year man's rendezvous with God in the dimension of time, otherwise known as Hashem's appointed festivals. And we read, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Hashem's appointed festivals that you are to designate as holy convocations, these are my appointed festivals. So where does Israel, representing man, representing the human element of life, where does it bisect with the parallel of time? We just saw it. In that verse that we read right before, in chapter 22, you shall observe my commandments and perform them. I am Hashem. You shall not desecrate my holy name. Rather, I should be sanctified among the children of Israel. I am Hashem who sanctifies you, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be a God unto you. I am Hashem. And here God tells us, say to them, Hashem's appointed festivals that you are to designate as holy convocations, these are my appointed festivals. You call them out, you designate them. As Henry David Thoreau wrote, each more melodious note I hear brings this reproach to me, that I alone afford the ear. Who would the music be? God leaves it up to us to designate these times and to sanctify them. A holiday is called Yom Tov. Yom Tov, literally a good day. These are days of a high revelation of goodness. The Moadim, the appointed times of Hashem that are described here, the festivals, they illuminate and sanctify all time. That's the dimension of time. Through Israel, that's the dimension of life, who call them, who designate them. At the Holy Temple, that's the dimension of space. Nowadays, observing the holidays of the Torah might really be beautiful experience, nice, pleasant time together with family, I don't know, beautiful prayers and good food. You think that's it? You think that's what it was designed to be? Everything that we have today, that's what we were praying for? That's what it means to keep the festivals of the Torah? This is also an illusion. The Torah's intention is for the three-pronged plug of time, life, and place to be plugged into one socket. When Israel observes the festivals by ascending to the Holy Temple, this is the tikkun, the unification, the perfection of all the planes of reality uniting in the whole. We bring all these dimensions together. And after chapter 23's description of the yearly cycle of the festivals, we encounter two more commandments that are to be fulfilled by Israel in the tabernacle, later in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The commandment that the menorah be lit by Aaron every day from evening till morning, that the light of the menorah is constantly shining as an eternal decree for all generations. And the commandment of the showbread, 12 loaves of specially baked bread that are constantly displayed before the presence of God. And regarding these loaves, we read, and you shall take fine flour and bake it into 12 loaves. Each loaf shall be made from 2/10 of an ephah of flour, and you shall place them in 2 stacks, 6 in each stack upon the pure table before Hashem. And you shall place pure frankincense along each stack, and it shall be a reminder for the bread, a fire offering to Hashem. Each and every Shabbat, he shall set it up before Hashem to be there continuously from the children of Israel, an eternal covenant. And it shall belong to Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in a holy place, for it is a holy of holies for him among the fire offerings of Hashem, an eternal statute. So these breads are placed on the table of the showbread every Shabbat. And according to tradition, they remained hot all week long. Understand what this is saying? There is a common denominator here of holiness that is manifest in the person of the Kohanim, in the time of the festivals, in the menorah, in the showbread, illuminating and sanctifying every dimension through Israel's sanctification of God. The connection, the juxtaposition in the Parsha of the menorah to the holidays, just as the menorah in the Holy Temple shines light out to the whole world, so also Shabbat and Yom Tov, the festivals, bring light into every day. The whole concept of the festival is a revelation of goodness in time. Just as Israel is to live with an assignment, to sanctify God's name, and just as the Moadim, the appointed festivals, exist in time, and the Holy Temple exists in space, they're all the same. And any division that we have at all is an illusion. It's all connected. So every Shabbat, the loaves are arranged and they stay hot the entire week long. What is that? That is a testimony that God's blessing comes into the world through the Holy Temple, and from there it goes out into the whole world, into every physical aspect of creation on Shabbat. Because from there, from that point in time, it goes into all the days of the week. And it goes out from the Beit HaMikdash to all places, and from Israel to all creation. And the light of the menorah, lit by the high priest and shining within the Holy Temple, is bringing light to the whole world. And frankly, it's so apropos that we're reading this Torah portion this week, and this is the week of Israel Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut. And this is why you should be celebrating the existence of Israel, because Israel is the hope of the world, and Israel's mandate is to bring all of this together so that we can be liberated from our Lilliputian hallucinations. Showbread, for example, holding the secret of the innermost blessing of Hashem in our everyday reality, and just as the festivals, the Moadim in time, parallel the Mikdash, the Holy Temple in space, and the light of the menorah and the showbread of the golden table radiating their blessing throughout the year, and from there going out to the whole world. Everything in this Torah portion is coming to teach us and to urge us to strive to overcome the illusions that we suffer from, that separates everything, that separates us from Hashem, that makes us feel that everything is monotonous, and that nothing can be done to elevate our lives. We're being encouraged here to see the whole package of space and time and life, to see the whole and to live the whole. And all of this vision of total unity was challenged by the king of illusion, the blasphemer, who blasphemed God, who appears towards the end of the parsha. He's stuck in this illusion of death, of banality, of futility. And according to tradition, the blasphemy that he uttered was against the showbread. He didn't think it would work. His reaction to this newly received commandment was to mock and scoff God. Say, God's not going to be interested in this bread. It's going to be cold and old. It's never going to stay warm. He doesn't want your old, cold bread. He was full of doubt. It wasn't about the bread. It was about the uselessness of trying to do anything in this world. I know a lot of people like that who allege that the detachment and disinterest of God in our lives is the only reality. And frankly, there's no greater blasphemy, because nothing can be further from the truth Torah is teaching us. Everything matters. Everything is whole and unified and one at the source. In space, with the Shekhinah dwelling in the Holy Temple, in time, with our rendezvous with God throughout the year, in our lives as we sanctify God and not desecrate Him, always moving forward towards our destiny to sanctify God's name, to elevate, to live each moment to the fullest, and to let it all shine, to realize our attachment to Him and to each other and the unity of all things through our mitzvot, all year round, everywhere, for everyone. And as Alice said, there's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then.